YouTube, today we're going to go over the Reshiram Zekrom team that I use for back-to-back battles. Let's get started and roll the episode. So why Reshiram and Zekrom? It's been a widely requested duo in the comment section, and I think both of them have their individual strengths. Zekrom's really good against a lot of the common Kyogre teams, while Reshiram handles the very popular Zacian. And I think they have some really strong points, especially with their max moves being pretty powerful because of the strong base moves that they have in Blue Flare and Bolt Strike. I really want to incorporate a Fusion Flare plus Fusion Bolt combination. However, I felt like it was just better off to use the strong, really big attacks because I was probably going to be Dynamaxing these Pokemon in most of my games. I felt like it was going to be pretty powerful just to show off their strengths. So I ended up starting off with this team that capitalized on the Reshiram and Zekrom's bulk and their damage output. So how was the team formed? Well, it started off with the Reshiram and Zekrom duo, as this is the duo that was requested. So I started off with Reshiram and Zekrom, and then I had a few different ideas with Fusion Bolt and Fusion Flare. I decided, I was going to try out a Whimsicott, maybe some Venusaur action with like Sunny Day to help out against the rain teams and power up the Reshiram at the same time. However, I felt like even with Tailwind, there were a lot of opponents that would just have Tailwind and faster things on the opposing side. So I felt like I wasn't really getting much value of that Tailwind instead. So I thought, you know what, I'm going to capitalize more on Reshiram and Zekrom's bulk because they have pretty decent bulk with high damage output. So I wanted to take advantage of that, and I decided, you know what, I'm replacing the speed control. I'm going to go with Grimmsnarl. It gives me a Thunder Wave option if I want that speed control, if they don't have a Tailwind user. And I can have screens, which Reshiram and Zekrom really do appreciate in this format, especially with their max, and allows me to set up Dragon Dance easier with Zekrom. So that is what I ended up deciding to go for. So the next option I had after I had Grimmsnarl with the dragons is figuring out a way to deal with ground types, because ground types are a really big pain for this team. And I felt like I need something that can switch into ground types. I like having Rillaboom on this team because it is a ground switch in, and Grassy Glide can really help out with a few different things. I liked it for Kyogre, which could give Reshiram a little bit of trouble, even with the Zekrom. I still like it, and the ground switch in, and also like Earthquakes, Bulldozes. I can take advantage of the Grassy Surge and heal up my Reshiram and Zekrom with screens. I felt like it was a pretty fantastic combination. So the next Pokemon I decided to add to the team was the Thick Fat Curse Yawn Snorlax, which I really enjoyed in the earlier series of Generation 8. I think it's a fantastic Pokemon. I think it had a bit of potential, and I was messing around with it in Series 11 before Series 12 was announced. And I think this Pokemon's really good because in a format where there's a lot of damage output, it's really nice to have the option to like take the attack and slow them down with like a potential yawn and force them out, or make them forced to take the sleep turns. It's really great for stalling out Dynamax, and I felt like Snorlax really fits on this team. Now, with Zekrom and Rillaboom, I did have double ice weakness, which I thought the Thick Fat really covered for nicely there. And I couldn't really add a fire type that I wanted. I didn't want to really add Incineroar because I already had a fire and a dark type in Grimmsnarl and Reshiram. So I felt like, you know what, this gives me a fire switch in, this gives me an ice switch in, this gives me ways to slow down if it's a really offensive team that I'm facing, both Trick Room and out of Trick Room, because Snorlax can just like take the attacks with the screens, get a yawn off, and slow down the game. So I really liked having the Snorlax on this team. I felt like it really fit the pacing. It just gave me that option. And then the final Pokemon, I knew I wanted water coverage because I wanted a way to hit Incineroar, because I don't exactly have the best ways to hit through Incineroar already. I knew I wanted a special attacker, and I thought about water types in Suicune. I also thought about Gastrodon, and I thought about Rotom Wash. So the reason I ended up going towards Rotom Wash is because it has the ability to levitate, which really does help out against like Landis and ground type moves in general, which I felt like was pretty valuable on the team. So I really did like that as well. So I added Rotom Wash to balance out the team of 6. All right, let's go over the items, the movesets, and the EV spreads of the team. We have Life Orb Reshiram up first with the Turbo Blaze ability with Blue Flare, Draco Meteor, Earth Power, and Protect. Overall, I felt like Reshiram is a very solid restricted. It has really good bulk as well as a high special attack stat. 100, 100, and 120 in HP and defenses are pretty good. 150 special attack is pretty insane, and it's just its speed is a little bit lacking with a 90 speed. Overall, it's a really solid restricted though. Of course, Dragon Fire is really good coverage and helps out against Zacian because it can usually live an attack and then OHKO back with either Blue Flare, Max Flare, or Max Quake, which is really solid. So Life Orb Reshiram, because I knew that this was going to be the main damage dealer with the team. I had no way of boosting the Reshiram other than Helping Hand. So I felt like I'm going to give this the maximum damage output that I can with the Life Orb, which I felt like was pretty solid. It allowed me to get like Max Quake KOs on Incineroars, and I felt like it was the best item choice overall. Turbo Blaze is really great here because it ignores Levitate on certain Rotoms, and then I can like Max Quake, which is really useful for like Rotom Heat, especially because Zekrom can't really damage the Rotom Heat. So Blue Flare, Draco Meteor, Earth Power, Protect. Blue Flare, Draco Meteor, powerful max moves and powerful moves outside of Dynamax. just really strong. Overpower for the coverage for Incineroar and Max Quake is really nice on this team. And then Protect, of course, to preserve the Reshiram, stall out a few turns, get some grassy terrain recovery from Rillaboom's always super solid. And then the EV spread, I decided to go with max special attack. Again, I wasn't really having much of a bonus on Reshiram. I didn't have fake tears on Grimmsnarl to help out with the damage dealing output. I only had helping hand on Rotom Wash, so I felt like, you know what, let's capitalize and have the max special attack. Then I decided for bulk, I wanted some HP. So I gave myself some HP to make it a number divisible by 16 to get extra grassy terrain recovery. And then I gave the rest into speed. I didn't have to go like extra into speed. It already outsped like Calyrex, Shadow Rider, for instance, after a Thunder Wave from Grimmsnarl. And I don't have fake tears, so I'm not outspeeding Eliki after a Scary Face. So it's not really like a point of that. So overall, I felt like that the EVs were pretty good as it was able to take really good attacks, especially with Dynamax and Screens Up, and outspeed a good chunk of Pokemon out there. Next up we have is the leftovers Thick Fat Snorlax with Brick Break, Darkest Lariat, Yawn, and Curse. One of my favorite Snorlax sets from early Gen 8. Series 5 Snorlax was really fun to play, and I think it had a lot of potential even in the restricted formats. And yeah, I just really love this Pokemon. It does so much work. So leftovers plus Thick Fat, of course I'm not running a berry, so I don't really need Gluttony. And there isn't really much poison in the format, so Thick Fat of course really does help out with the ice and fire switch-ins, which is really great. Leftovers is a pretty consistent item for recovery. Brick Break, Darkest Lariat, Yawn, and Curse. Yawn is one of my favorite because of the fact that Snorlax can just take attacks really well and then dish off a Yawn, which is really good for slowing down the pace of the game. It's a really great disruptor to like really offensive teams, so I really do like the Snorlax set. Curse really helps out. It's a good backup option and increases my defenses on the Snorlax, which is pretty nice, especially if the Zacian on the opposing side isn't running a Sacred Sword set, and it allows Snorlax to put on pressure, be bulkier for the Yawn set, and dish out some decent damage. So overall, really solid options. Brick Break was the move that I decided to add. I originally had Seed Bomb. This was before Gastrodon back in the previous series. However, I felt like I didn't need Seed Bomb as I already had Rillaboom on this team, and the grass coverage wasn't really that important. So I was looking at moves and I felt like, you know what, since I'm leaning this into Grimmsnarl stuff that has like a really good offensive Pokemon, I thought, you know what, why not have Brick Break? Because Brick Break hits a few things like Dialga, for instance, which is pretty nice, although I'll probably be clicking Darkest Lariat. It's really nice to get rid of the screens option, I felt like, and it was pretty good coverage, I felt like, for the most part. I added Brick Break, and Darkest Lariat was for the Calyrex Shadow Rider because I really like having that backup, especially with no Dark Move on Grimmsnarl, so I really liked having the Lariat on the Snorlax set. The EV spread is from Series 5, however, I still think it's a really solid EV spread. 164 HP gives you a stat 256, which is divisible by 16, so you get the maximum leftovers and grassy terrain recovery. I really do like that. I really like having plus special defense natures on Snorlax because it allows Snorlax to take special attacks really well, and I don't really like investing into like a plus defense nature unless you're going for a very specific calc most of the time, because you just lose out on so many stat points. So I just prefer having the Snorlax being able to take special attacks a little bit better as well, which I really do appreciate, and I prefer just going like max defense on the Snorlax on the EV spread side. So that's what I did here, and then I dumped the remaining that I didn't really need into attack so it can still do a lot of damage output. I think there was some Seed Bomb calcs back in the day, but I don't think it really influenced it that much. However, it's still a really strong Snorlax. It just is able to take attacks really well, especially with the screens on Grimmsnarl, and then fire off the Yawns. It's a great disruptor and a really strong Pokemon in general, especially in Dynamax formats. Next Pokemon we have is the G-Max Rillaboom with the Assault Vest item with Grassy Surge for the ability with Grassy Glide, High Horsepower, U-Turn, and Fake Out. Overall, Rillaboom is a great Pokemon. Of course, it helps out against Kyogre, which is really nice, and the Grassy Surge is fantastic for Snorlax, Reshiram, and Zekrom on this team. The Assault Vest is really great because it's able to switch into Kyogre Water Spouts, and with screens up from Grimmsnarl, can really take special attacks really solidly, which I absolutely love. And it helps out against Calyrex, expanding force teams as well. I really do like having Grassy Glide, of course, with the Grassy Surge. High Horsepower was for a bit of coverage against like Incineroars and Zacians. U-Turn for momentum, and Fake Out, of course, to help support the team. So this is the original Rillaboom EV spread I was going to use. I think I used the wrong Rillaboom when I was recording back-to-back battles. I'm pretty sure I used a 148 special defense Rillaboom with like a 4-speed Rillaboom. And the 148 speed was to outspeed G-Max Lapras and get the max move off before it can get up an Aurora Veil. However, it didn't really come too much into play, thankfully, and it was still able to take attacks. The original EV spread was pretty standard with like 116 attack adamant. It gives an extra stat point in the attack stat and some pretty high HP stat. I gave mine enough to live for Nightshades from like Dusclops if there's no grassy terrain available. And yeah, overall, still pretty solid. Rillaboom's a really flexible Pokemon. It does pretty good work. It's a tanky Pokemon. Grassy Glide priority is pretty insane. Fake Out, U-Turn for momentum. And yeah, it was just pretty solid on this team. Next Pokemon we have is the Magnet Zekrom with the Terravolt for the ability with Bolt Strike, Dual Wing Beast, Dragon Dance, Protect. Zekrom's a great Pokemon. Terravolt with Bolt Strike is fantastic against Kyogre Lightning Rod teams, or Lightning Rod teams in general. It's just able to ignore Lightning Rod and Volt Absorb, and it's really good. Magnet, of course, to help power up the Electric type move that Zekrom has with the Max Lightnings and the Bolt Strike, which already hits really hard, but the Magnet just really helps out even further, especially against Intimidate. And then the coverage, Bolt Strike, of course, really strong electric move, can even Oko Kyogre through Intimidate, really strong move. Dual Wing Beats here was for the Airstream because I felt like it was pretty nice to get a Airstream up with Reshiram, as it would be a really nice support there, and allows my Zekrom to potentially sweep as well. Dragon Dance is great because I have screens on this team, so it's actually a lot easier to set up the Zekrom compared to like my previous Zekrom team, and I was able to get Dragon Dances up pretty consistently throughout. And yeah, a +1 Zekrom is actually really threatening and allows me to outspeed Calyx Shadow Rider and threaten it with a Bolt Strike, which is really nice. And then Protect, of course, to preserve the Zekrom. And the EV spread here, I went with 212 Jolly Nature, and that allows me to get the 150 speed stat, which allows me to outspeed Calyx Shadow Rider and Zacians with a +1 in the speed stat from either Dual Wing Beast Airstream or the Dragon Dance from Zekrom. Then I decided I'm gonna have some bulk on the Zekrom because Zekrom does like its bulk, and since I'm boosting up with the Dragon Dance and the Magnet, I felt like I didn't need all the attacks. So 132 HP allows me to get a HP stat that is divisible by 16, so I can get maximum grassy terrain recovery, and then I put the leftover in attack and the defenses. Overall, Zekrom is fantastic. It is pretty bulky, and it was a pretty star of the show. It did a lot of work, especially after Dragon Dance. This thing was really hard for some teams to stop, and it has some pretty good matchups, I think, in the battles that we played. So fantastic Pokemon overall. So next we have a Citrus Berry, Levitate, Rotom Wash with Hydro Pump, Electro Up, Helping Hand, and Protect. A little bit of an unconventional Rotom, but it just worked on this team. So I felt like that this Rotom Wash with the Citrus Berry was nice for the recovery. Hydro Pump was pretty good for the coverage against Incineroar, other ground types, and Landospherian, of course, which was the big one. And then Electro Up and Helping Hand were the odd ones, but they really worked out. So I felt like I didn't need extra electric coverage like T-Bolt because I already had Zekrom. I felt like I wasn't Dynamaxing Rotom Wash in too many games, so I didn't really feel like a Nasty Plot set really made sense here. So I wanted a support Rotom Wash set, and I felt like it would be pretty good. I thought about having Will-O-Wisp on this Rotom Wash, but I felt like maybe with Yawn, Snorlax, and Thunderwave Grimmsnarl, it might be a little bit too much where I kind of screw myself on statuses, especially if like they're able to catch a Willow on a Pokemon that I really want to get a Yawn off, etc. So I felt like, you know what, I'll scrap this Will-O-Wisp set. What else can I really run? So I looked at this move pool and I'm like, Electro's pretty nice because, you know, I had the Zekrom, which can be really nice with a -1 speed on the opponent's side. It could help out the Reshiram, and I really did like Helping Hand Rotom Wash because it was a surprise factor that many might not expect. They might think Rotom Wash might try to set up a Nasty Plot, so they might turn down the Rotom, and then I could get maybe like a really good KO. Like Helping Hand Grassy Glide with Rillaboom was really good. Helping Hand with Zekrom was fantastic, and of course with Reshiram with the max moves, really strong option. So I really did like that. It gave me more damage output in the form of a support move, and I felt like, yeah, it could really work on this team and help, you know, break some really defensive threats with the Reshiram. I was able to Oko like a P2 and some other things throughout, and I felt like, yeah, this is a pretty solid move, I think, on this Rotom Wash set. And of course, Protect and Preserve the Rotom Wash. EV Spread, this is pretty much the same Rotom Wash set I've been running throughout most of the Gen 8 formats. It's just a max HP, some defense, 36 special attack. Modest is just really strong for Nasty Plot sets, but since I'm not running Nasty Plot, it still does a pretty good amount of damage even outside of Nasty Plot, which is great. And then some just general bulk and a little bit of speed. This speed allows me to outspeed like Calyx Shadow Rider after a Thunder Wave from my Grimmsnarl or if they're -2. Overall, very solid Rotom Wash set. Even though it was a little bit strange, it did end up working out, and Helping Hand was a fantastic move, I felt like, for this team that really did need more damage output. Final Pokemon is the Light Clay Prankster Grimmsnarl with Spirit Break, Thunder Wave, Reflect, and Light Screen. Not really much to say about Grimmsnarl. I've talked about this Pokemon so many times, especially throughout my team builders. It's pretty much the same Grimmsnarl set you always see. Light Clay for the screens, Prankster, really good support. Spirit Break is really nice for the special attack drops and pretty good fairy coverage. Helps against Urshifu as well, which is probably one actually big threat to the team. However, there's not that many Urshifus running around, thankfully, right now, so not really that important, but gives me a nice option to hit those Urshifus. And Thunder Wave for the speed control. I chose Thunder Wave over Scary Face because I'm more worried about Dragapult than I am Regieleki, so that's the reason why I have Thunder Wave, is so I can hit the Dragapults, for instance. And just like perma speed control is really nice, especially since Grimmsnarl tends to go down pretty early in games, especially with like Zacian out, and they usually target the Grimmsnarl to prevent like restless screens or Thunder Wave disruptions from going off. And the EV spread, I've used this Grimmsnarl set multiple times. It's just really effective. There's not really a specific benchmark right here. It's just really bulky, and especially with screens, just able to take attacks. Usually survive one hit, unless it's from Zacian, of course. And yeah, it's just a fast Grimmsnarl. The only thing that's really like remarkable here is the 92 speed, and that's just to outspeed a max speed Amoonguss, which I felt like, you know, is pretty nice overall. So I can break a potential Focus Sash if that's the case, and then not have to worry about catching a Spore potentially. So that is the Grimmsnarl set. It's just pretty standard and just does the job done. It's a really solid Pokemon. The format screens are really appreciated, and it can disrupt a lot of teams. So what are the common leads with this team? I would say the most common leads with the team usually involve Grimmsnarl. Grimmsnarl screens is really solid, I think, for this team. It really does help out getting up screens for either Reshiram for really good damage output, Zekrom for good damage output, or setting up for Dragon Dance, or potentially like Snorlax to slow down the game with Yawns, as Snorlax will be able to take a lot of attacks with the screens and then fire off a Yawn to help slow down the pace of the game. I think Grimmsnarl is one of the core leads of this team, and I would say those are probably the strongest leads. Then the next couple, it depends on the situation. I think Snorlax can lead without screens if you don't really need the Grimmsnarl lead, or if it's threatened by the Zacian, as I really like having Rotom Wash in the back usually if I lead Grimmsnarl, because I usually like switching into the Rotom Wash potentially to absorb the Behemoth Blade. Now, of course, there are other leads like Rillaboom can lead with anything because of the Fake Out. The Grassy Terrain is really appreciated for the Snorlax, Reshiram, and Zekrom. And then you have like really powerful offensive leads with Reshiram and Zekrom, of course, which can really dish out a lot of damage. Even without the Fusion Flare, Fusion Bolt combination, it really does a good amount of damage. So I would say those would probably be the common leads. Overall, how you play this team, it'd be really just like using Grimmsnarl to set up the screens once again. It really allows the team to take attacks really well. And then you either set up with like Dragon Dances, or you try to pick up some KOs with the heavy power of Reshiram, or you slow down the game with potential Snorlax, which is really solid to set up the Zekrom or Reshiram KOs or the late game. And that is the show. I hope you all enjoyed the thought process of what went behind the Reshiram and Zekrom team. I think both of these have really good potential. They're not exactly the fastest Pokemon. However, they have really good bulk and really good attack stats. If you did enjoy the video, be sure to leave a like down below, leave a comment down below, as it really does help me out. And of course, if you did enjoy this team, make sure you try it out with the Team Builder and check out the episodes that this team was featured in. And you can go check out the rest of my Series 12 content, where I feature some really cool teams. But otherwise, thank you all for tuning in. Have a great day, people, and until we bow again, I'll catch you all later.